You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm Weston Williams, joined this week by no one. That's right, we're off for Independence Day here in America, and, certain of our co-hosts are on the other side of the pond, I assume, mourning the tragic loss of the American colonies, but that's neither here nor there. But we have two interviews in our best of segment here. First, we have bass baritone Kyle Ketelsen, where they talk about acid reflux, as I recall, followed by, that's right, the famous Jake Heggie interview, the one that actually exists. It's well worth your time. Enjoy your holiday. Stay safe out there. And we'll be back next week with more new content. But until then, enjoy bass baritone Kyle Ketelsen.
Sorry, everybody, I'm eating chips because I had one of those days where just been nonstop, and the only thing I can put in my mouth is something crunchy and loud, perfect for a podcast.
Really let it wash over you.
Yeah. So over the Thanksgiving weekend, I was able to get in touch with Kyle Ketelsen, and he was super generous with his time. We actually have such a long interview, I had to edit some of it out. One of the things that got edited was one of the main reasons why I wanted to talk to him, which is what's going on in Austria. So at the top of the show, you heard a little bit of that conversation. But in short, they are a month into rehearsing the brand new Barry Kosky production of Don Giovanni at Wiener Staatsoper. And the intendant, Bogdan Roscic, seems to be in negotiations with Alexander Schallenberg, the Chancellor of Austria, so that the lockdown will end in time for the run of Don Giovanni. Now
that is called clout.
Yes.
Yes.
They're going to miss the first three performances that are scheduled, but the first scheduled performance was going to be the live stream, which is actually going to happen just without an audience. So that happens, I think, on December 5th and will be streamed on the Wiener Staatsoper streaming platform. So we can see it. And in this production, Kyle Ketelsen, who is a renowned leporello, he's been singing leporello like his whole life, is going to be
Does he have
singing...
that on his LinkedIn profile, renowned leporello?
He will be singing the role of Don Giovanni. But I wanted to talk to him about leporello, and we begin the conversation, I think, talking about leporello, where we are going to edit into it. I remember his leporello from 2014, which he did here in Chicago in the Robert Falls production at Lyric Opera, which starred Ana Maria Martinez and Marina Rebecca and Mariusz Kwiecien. Man, was he so good in that show. And it was one of those performances where I felt like, oh, I am seeing a complete artist. Like, this guy is so embodied in the role. He really has the physical thing timed out so well where it just feels so natural. Like he's responding to what's happening on stage. Sometimes you go see a show and somebody could drop like one of their costume parts and it's on the ground and like nobody touches it because it's like not in their blocking to like touch it. Like that would never happen with Kyle Ketelsen. Yes. Kyle Ketelsen's type of person like sees everything that's happening on stage and like just knows how to do everything in character and to time everything. He just looks so fantastic and he sounds like $1 million. So I wanted to talk to him about singing leporello, but we ended up surprisingly talking about building a family as an opera singer, which is one of our favorite topics. And also a surprise topic I wasn't expecting, how to deal with acid reflux. We actually talked about it for like 10 minutes. So we're going to get into this interview right now. Warning, it was early for me when we recorded this, so I'm very puffy. So this is how I normally look in real life, but in the morning, I'm just...
It's why it's a podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
Before we go into this, we're going to... Oh, I have to tell you that he was on Conan O'Brien's podcast recently, and we're going to hear a little bit of that at the end of the show. But we're going to begin with a little sample of Kyle singing with St. Louis Symphony in 2009 from Berlioz's Damnation of Faust. This is Une puce gentille.
Une puce gentille chez un prince logé, comme sa propre fille, le brave homme l'aimait. Et l'histoire alla su par son tailleur, un jour lui fit prendre mesure à point l'habit de corps. Plein de joie, dès qu'il se vit parer, porteur de soie et de croix décorée. Viveurs de province, ses frères et ses sœurs, qui par ordre du prince devant le grand seigneur. Mais ce qui fit bien pire, c'est que les gens de cour, sans oser rien dire, secrétaient tout le jour. Riel politique, appelez-nous leur destin, et des crimes nous piquent, et grâce la sera.
Yeah, I've sung Leporello like it's literally like 170 performances, 180 performances of Leporello. I've done maybe 30 productions, 35 productions. I've lost track, but it's right around there. And you know, for years I didn't want to approach Giovanni. I had too much respect for the role to think that I could do it anywhere nearly as well as it should be done. I first sang Giovanni at grad school in English, at Indiana University in English in 1997, I think, and it was very difficult. And then I didn't touch it for another 9 years, and that was in Minnesota Opera in 2006, and it was on the heels of the greatest vocal crisis of my career, which was caused by reflux. It was before I had acid reflux under control, and my voice basically disappeared. I lost my resonance, I lost my range, and then I was not asked, but I was already contracted to do Don Giovanni just a few months after I had this huge event in my vocal life, so to speak. And so I sang that thing horribly. I couldn't cover anything. I couldn't soften any of the high notes. I had to ask the conductor to take one of the arias down a half step so I could sing it. It was very, very difficult. And then, I've just loved the character of Leporello so much. You have the tools by Da Ponte and Mozart to steal the show every night, if you can do it. And so I had quite a good success with that role. And, it's funny because, so 2006 was the last time I've done it. So we're talking almost 16 years, because it was January of 2006. So almost 16 years. And a couple of things happened during that time. One, I did a Leporello in Tokyo, and it was in concert version. And I remember thinking after the show, and this is probably 4 years ago, wow, I sang that. I felt great about that vocally. What was different about tonight? And then I, of course, realized, well, I'm not rolling around on the floor and doing somersaults and being beaten in the sextet and running around. I could actually just stand and deliver. And then it kind of flipped the switch in my head. Maybe Giovanni might be something that I could do. And I've fielded offers from companies asking me to do Giovanni, and my agent has always brought it up to me, and I just kind of say, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Because I've worked with Tervel and Keenly Side and Finley and all these guys as the Giovanni, and I've seen what they've done, and I've often thought I can't do that well enough for my satisfaction. But so a couple things happened. That Tokyo gig was like a switch had been flipped, and also my voice type, which is true bass baritone, a bass with high notes. My voice has changed. I'm 50 now, and so things are a whole lot easier to sing right now than they were, and it's kind of opened my eyes to doing much heavier repertoire. And then over COVID, there were a couple of things that I did. My first Kaspar and Freischütz in Munich, which is heavy, and then I had people coming out of the woodwork saying, what Wagnerian do you do? What do you? I said, nothing. I don't do. So now I'm kind of opening my eyes to that. Maybe a Dutchman or maybe a Rheingold.
Mima?
No, what's his name? The one-eyed man. Wotan. There you go. That'd be the only Wotan that I could probably do right now.
Okay, that's interesting. Wait, you touched on so many things right now, and I
right.
Wind it back.
It's the Lagavulin that caused it.
It's because I always try to make this show about things that people can really relate to and see themselves in somebody who's had a successful career as you. You had reflux. What were the symptoms? What was it like to not know? And what was the the therapy?
So, I think back to well before I had the blowout. I had the first time I remember it being it affecting my singing, and I didn't know it was reflux, was when I would sing a high note, and it would. So on a high note, instead of going I would go it would just break up a little bit. And I thought, why is it doing that? That was reflux.
So the chords were not meeting all the way because there were they weren't clean. They weren't all the
probably inflamed, probably irritated, inflamed. When you have one of the strongest acids known to man wash over your chords and your pharynx and your larynx, ain't that great for singing? Whereas most people, non-singers, doesn't bother them a bit if they have a little bit of rasp to their voice. That adds character, right? Yeah. But for us, elite users of this thing, these two flaps of skin down here, we notice every little bit. And so that was like the canary in the coal mine for me. And I took some proton pump inhibitors, your Nexium, Prilosec, that sort of thing in a lesser dose at first. And then I remember from basketball, because I played basketball. I had to stop 10 years ago, but I played for 21 years, just, passionately at school, then at another school, and then into like wherever I would travel, I would find the basketball court there. And that was my exercise. And I tore ACL over here on my right side, and then I tore the ACL on my left side, and then I tore the ACL on my right side. Well, the second ACL surgery I had, I gave myself enough time, or as much time after the surgery as I did my first ACL surgery, to start singing again. And I started singing, and basically this is 2005, December of 2005 is when I had the second ACL. And I started singing because I had a gig coming up and I wanted to start preparing again. I was up and walking, and my voice, it hit a ceiling. I would, and it would stop. And it was like I couldn't go through my passaggio, and I couldn't go into my head voice. I couldn't cover anything. And it felt exactly like it felt, or it reminded me of very much of when I was 19 and had just started studying singing and didn't know how to do that stuff.
Yeah.
The difference was I know how to do it, but suddenly my body wasn't letting me. The ability was not there. And so I just start wondering what's going on. And so I ended up seeing a great speech therapist named Brian Petty at University of Wisconsin Hospitals in Madison, who's great. And I then saw Dr. Ford, who was a legend at University of Wisconsin. And so between the two of them, we kind of, I did daily, for 18 months, I did daily exercises. And it took that long to get my voice back to feeling like it was anything. And I had role debuts during that time. I mean, and house debuts. I did Figaro at Covent Garden during that time. I did Escamillo in San Francisco at that time. And I didn't do them justice at all. I didn't cancel anything for better or worse during that period. So anyway, it's a period of life. And the more singers I speak to, the more have that experience. Not exactly that experience, but they have an experience where they came to a crisis in their vocal life, and they thought, what else can I do? What is there? Can I, if I can't be a singer, because, singers are crazy. No matter, I consider myself a pretty sane singer, but there's still that little crazy corner of my brain that talks to me, like you'll never sing again. You'll never, you're screwed. Even if you want to have a cold, there's a little voice that says, you're never going to sing again. And you try and tamp it down and say, shut up, that's nuts. And most of the time it's wrong. Well, this, it was pretty desperate. And so it was a down time for me, mentally. I'm not a depressive type at all, but that was tough. But I clawed back out of it and got with a new teacher. And
was there something you had to change with your diet, or when you ate, or like when you slept, or this type of stuff?
Well, there's all that. Reflux kind of runs in my family. My dad, as long as I can remember, he always was popping Tums. This is before there were drugs for it. Yeah. Popping Tums, antacids. My sisters each have it. One of my sisters, she was inhaling it for years, and she was so raspy, and she had a horrible raspy voice because she ended up having her nasal passages bored, mistakenly because of the symptoms she was having before they finally realized and it was diagnosed correctly as reflux. And my oldest sister has it as well. So it's the force is strong with this family. So I have to take the pills. I've continued to take the pills. Nexium, I take the maximum dosage every single day. And also, that's not enough. I can't just eat what I want when I want. I don't eat late. After show, almost never. And if I ever do, it's a very rare treat, like have a little snack at a party or whatever, after an opera. But I can't.
You have to avoid things like pasta, like white starches, and
Well, so the list, the first, it's shock to the system for anyone who enjoys life.
Yeah.
The list is.
For anybody who likes pleasure.
Yeah, if you don't, you're good. You're good. If you don't like to have fun, you're good. So, alcohol. Okay. Tomato products, red wine, chocolate, any spicy food, and these are like my list of the best things in life. So thankfully in the end, there's more stuff in between, but in the end, it's about moderation, just like a lot of other things in life. It's about moderation. I don't eat late. I cut off at a certain time. And, some people say, wow, isn't that difficult? Isn't that difficult? My line is I either eat what I want when I want, or I have a singing career. Yeah. And so that choice is easy for me.
Okay, good. I like to hear that answer. It means you're dedicated.
Well, there was that moment.
You got to feed a family.
Yeah. Well, there was that moment in 06 where I was faced with what else could I do? And there were crickets. That's all I heard. What else can I do?
I'm so glad. No, I'm glad you said that, because I don't know. There are a lot of people out there who get so easily discouraged and they give up on their careers. And what? When people give up, great. If you couldn't, I'm going to sound like such a jerk, but if that was your obstacle to pursuing this, then I'm glad you figured it out at this age or at this point in your life and you did something else, But there are some people like you and me who you obviously are having a great singing career, but I've been pushing so hard my whole life to have something so I could be part of this community. And I'm 46 years old now, and I finally have a job that really reflects my passion, But
nice.
It's tough, and there's so many ways to get discouraged, and COVID happens, and then nobody has a job. I have one more question for you, but I also don't want to miss the opportunity. I got
time. We can keep going. It doesn't matter.
Well, the show is only an hour, so.
Okay.
No, you brought up your
fat.
You brought up your own family, and I know that you live in Wisconsin. Is that where your home base is?
Yep, outside of Madison.
Yeah, and this is always a topic that's interesting to us when somebody that has a career like yours, where you're in Vienna right now, and it's Thanksgiving in the U.S. What was it like to begin to start a family? What type of support did you have to make it possible? And which companies can you shout out as being particularly helpful in accommodating, I've got to bring my kid to rehearsal today, or can you play with him, get some stage people to play a game or something like that, do homework with them or something,
Well, first of all, I married well. I married up, as I say. When my wife and I have known each other from since 1991. We've been dating since 1994, and we got married in 99. She knew what I would be doing before I did. And that's no lie, no exaggeration at all. I am always very quick to praise her because, she has enriched my life and then lives of my kids. And she's the glue that binds us all. And, my dedication to my wife and to my family is a greater point of pride for me than my career in singing. I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky to have found her early on. And as I said, she knew what she was in for, because I think a lot of people have problems when their spouse discovers what being a singer means and they can't take it. My wife and I each have the great ability to be happy alone. I'm happy by myself. I've always been happy by myself, and she's the same way. And that's a huge part of it right there. And it was always before I knew what opera was, I knew I wanted to be a husband and a father. And so when I was faced with this career and thought, I think I'm actually going to make a career, and being hired for things before we had kids, I asked anyone who would listen and give me advice on what it means to have kids, young kids, especially when I'm trying to start a career. And my teacher at Indiana was Giorgio Tozzi, who was quite a famous singer, and he had kids and was married and had the best career you can imagine. And he said, just that you are thinking of that tells me that it'll be okay. Just the sole fact that you are concerned about that, I think you'll be okay. And that was a big part of it. Meaning I always put them first. I always let them know that they were the most important thing in my life and in our lives and my wife's life and mine. My wife always took the steps to close the gap, however it could be done. Like, oh man, I just got this offer to do this and this, but it means I'm going to be away 6 of 8 months, and she said, well, we'll come, that will make it work. We'll come. So they'd come to Barcelona, they'll come to Rome, or I've never, and it's funny, I embrace any opportunity to give advice to young singers. I have 2 or 3 here who have bent my ear and say, hey, can we talk about this? And I love it. I love it. Because anything that I can do to help, with their anxieties about doing this thing that I've done, I'm happy to do. And so one thing I say is I've never, ever regretted saying no to a role in order to be home. I've turned down some very big things, but I know I would have been miserable, because that's, if I'm going to be away for 4 months at a time without seeing my family, I can't. That's a deal breaker. Sorry. I just can't do it. And some companies over the years just don't understand that. They say, well, why would you want that? And I think, well, I don't need to work with you. If that's your attitude, I don't, if you can't, let's make it work in some other way. And I've never regretted that. I've never regretted spending money to go home to see my family, even for a few days. You asked about a company. I mean, most companies are just fine with families visiting. I would hesitate saying all, because I suppose there are a few who are not, but really it's up to the director, the conductor in the rehearsal atmosphere. And it's up to them to say, yeah, bring them on in. Come on in. That, if it were me and we were conducting a rehearsal and I hear a baby cry, it's beautiful. But I imagine some people might see it as a disruption, but I haven't really run into that. But I've always asked, and it's always been okay. I was at Covent Garden singing a big role. And my wife was due to have our son. This is 2005. And it came to pass that it was going to be a C-section. So it was scheduled. So we knew a date. And as soon as we knew the date, I asked them and they're like, yep, go. So I flew from London to home. 2 days, was at the birth of my son, spent time with my 2.5-year-old daughter, not enough time with anybody, and then flew back. And then we were in dress week, but you just make it work. It's easier these days. My kids are 16 and 18, and my relationship with them is stellar. It could not be better. A big part of this whole thing is that right there. I mean, and this right here, it's really amazing how much I can feel at home when I'm, I immerse myself as though I'm watching a movie. You immerse yourself and you get in there and So there's your long answer.
No, but God bless the families who, maybe were separated by a gig at the start of COVID and couldn't see each other because they were quarantined. And it must have been horrible. All right. Well, we should end on a fun note. You, like last month or 2 months ago, you were on Conan's podcast. How did you get picked for that?
It was a simple. So I started listening to Conan's podcast in the 2020, the big lockdown year, and I don't think he started very, very long before that, if at all. And I've always been a fan. When he took over for Letterman in like '94, I've just been a fan, and I see I'm a Simpsons fan, so I see things, and I can see his fingerprints on that. SNL, you catch a glimpse of him on Old Farley, Phil Hartman, SNLs. So I've always been a fan. Started listening to his podcast in the great lockdown of 2020. And the podcast is called Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. And he basically takes celebrities, not me, celebrities, and interviews them, just has long form interviews, whereas talk shows are only 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes. It's his own deal. So he gets to talk to them for 40 minutes. Anyway, so inside of that podcast he spawned a mini podcast called Conan O'Brien Needs a Fan. And so fans were encouraged, and it's still a thing, it's still going on, to go to the website and fill out a form. And so I thought, wouldn't that be fun? And then I didn't do anything past that. And then my wife, who's always looking ahead and knows things that no other human knows, said, you should do that. And I said, why? They're not going to talk to me. What? And so, okay, I did it. And I remember filling it out. So the form was, I think they asked you 5 questions or 5 questions you would ask Conan. And I just tried to be irreverent, and just kind of strange and odd and funny, and referential to the show, to his stuff in the past. Like one of the questions I asked him was, how do you sleep at night? That's it. And then another one was, are you at all concerned with the carbon footprint that you were causing to maintain that coif? His hairdo. And so I guess they liked it. So they contacted me and said, hey, we'd be interested in having an interview. And I said, great. Okay. So I had an interview with Sean, one of his producers. And he asked me those questions that I asked Conan. So he flipped them on me. Yeah. And, it's basically a screening process. They're seeing if you can hang. Yeah, exactly. See if you're quick, see if you can actually carry on a conversation.
Not like what you're doing here on operaboxscore.
Not at all. I'm almost asleep here on the couch. You still here, Oliver?
Scotch.
Yeah. Oh, come on. That's life, baby. So then I remember finishing that interview, the first interview, and I said to my wife, I went upstairs, said to my wife, I'm going to be on that show. I know it. It felt so good. And then 2 days later, they said, hey, we'd like to invite you on the show. And so I'm like, I did it. It was a lot of nerdy fun. And it was cool to, talk to him and to his 2 sidekicks. And
they put a lot of reverb on your Toreador.
They did. I saw that. And they did the same thing to his song too. Because, I think there were some comments. They played a 4-minute video on Conan's YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. And some people were like, what's he doing with his voice there? No, he can't sing. I'm like, I didn't, what am I going to do? It's the same way I've never had 6 packs drawn on me in a show. It's not going to happen. Sorry. They are what they are.
Yeah. It's funny that like reverb is a signal to the lay audience that now we are listening to music. If there's no reverb.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why they did that. I didn't ask. I thought it was funny. I immediately noticed because it's obvious.
Yeah.
And then they did the same to his nonsense reply. It was a lot of fun, and he was genuinely a treat. And when before we were, or after we were done recording, he, just complimented me and said, "Oh, just such great, we're not recording now. So this, it's not bullshit." So, and I think it's on the recording on the end result where he encouraged me. He's like, "Whenever you're singing, let me know and I'll come." I'm like, "Great." But I don't have anything in LA. I never sing in LA. Yeah.
Toreador, garde, toreador, toreador. Ils songe bien, oui, songeons combattant, car l'œil noir te regarde, et que l'amour t'attend, toreador, l'amour t'attend.
Oh my God, that was fantastic. Hey, that was, Kyle, that was fantastic.
Thank you.
And now I'm going to show the contrast between a real opera star who knows what he's doing and a jackass. And it goes something like this. Mi soparo si rabado ri by sagor by doribi ramba hosamba ramba rorasi hamborara hopa.
Wow, that's not bad. The pitch is pretty good.
Well, Kyle Ketelsen, it's been so great to talk to you. Thanks for opening up about reflux and about your love of Conan O'Brien. I know it's a very private thing. It's been great to have you on Opera Box Score.
Thank you, Oliver. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Anytime you want me, I'll be back.
Thanks again to our amazing guest, Kyle Ketelsen, for his insights into both acid reflux and Conan O'Brien. Coming up now, we've got the famous re-recorded interview with Jake Heggie, this one that we did eventually save, and we'll start off with a little introduction by Oliver Camacho.
So earlier today, Matt and I were able to snag Jake Heggie for just a quick 30 minutes in Chicago. His show, To Remain, is about to be produced by Chicago Fringe Opera. And since one of our regular panelists has a relationship with Chicago Fringe Opera, he had to recuse himself from today's episode. Hopefully, every week we'll have a guest that is having a relationship with Chicago Fringe Opera. So we never have to see that leprechaun again. But we have this wonderful interview with Jake Heggie, who is here to talk about a difficult opera. It's based on survivors' stories from the Holocaust. And he's going to tell us all about it. It's some heavy stuff, but in the traditional Jake Heggie way, he has found a way to add light and hope through the use of his, popular idioms and tonality, and giving the audience something to really, enjoy musically. It's not all thorny, angular music, as is not Jake Heggie's brand. And we'll start off the interview with him testifying that he indeed did appear on Opera Box Score years ago, though he doesn't remember it. I would love if you could just confirm for our audience that you did, in fact, give an interview to a radio show called Opera Box Score. I don't know what year it was, but when Chicago Opera Theater was doing Moby Dick, 2018?
19. That was
2019.
Spring of 19.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, it's 19?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember ever calling into WNUR in Chicago and talking to a couple of chumps that didn't know how to use their microphones and their tech?
You know what? I try to remember the good times.
Okay. So technically this is your second interview for Opera Box Score, but the first that will be heard by an audience.
We've referred to the other one as our lost episode many times.
So welcome back.
It was the White Whale episode.
Exactly.
It was.
We'll rebrand it.
So we just missed you for the opportunity to talk to you about If I Were You, which was the opera you wrote for the Merilla program, which the Bean and School of Music Opera Theater just mounted exactly a month ago today. That was it. So, and now I don't know if you're coming to Chicago or if you are giving your counsel over the internet to this company called Chicago Fringe Opera for your piece called To Remain. And luckily, Matt has seen it.
So he has a little bit more reference point. I've been listening to it all day long, and I understand that the commercial recording Out of Darkness isn't exactly what To Remain is. First of all, can you tell us what the subject matter is? And then two, tell us how it relates to the recording Out of Darkness.
Right. It had a long gestation piece, and quite public, actually. Sometimes you like to keep those things private, but To Remain started off as two separate one-act operas that were commissioned by an amazing group out of Seattle called Music of Remembrance. And what this group does, it's about to celebrate its 25th season. And it was founded by a woman named Minna Miller, who's also the artistic director. And Minna wanted to create a chamber group that would perform music that was lost to the Holocaust, composers that perished or were murdered, and their music then forgotten. And she gradually, over the years, started to expand that vision. And when I came along, she asked me to write a song cycle about the persecution of gays in the Holocaust. And I didn't actually know anything about this subject, and did a lot of research and told Minna, look, I want to do it. I think it's more of a theater piece, however. And so that evolved into a piece called For a Look or a Touch, with an actor and a baritone and a chamber ensemble. And
a baritone or a barahunk? Or maybe an aged barahunk, so if it's like thinking back, maybe you need like the Thomas Hampson version of barahunk.
Many baritones have done the role. All of them barahunks, I will tell you. But
so generous.
Anyway, and then then a couple years later, we decided she brought another story to my attention. And by the way, Out of Darkness, For a Look or a Touch was with librettist Gene Shear, who also wrote the libretto for Moby Dick, and It's a Wonderful Life, and If I Were You, and our upcoming...
He's your Hofmannsthal.
Yes.
Or your De Ponte, yeah.
Yes, he is. I've been lucky. I've had two. I had Terrence McNally, and now I have Gene Shear. And then a couple years later, Minna came to us with a piece called, that became Another Sunrise, that was about the life of a woman named Krystyna Jaworska, another Holocaust survivor story. And that was just a one-woman, one-act opera. But Krystyna, to survive in Auschwitz-Birkenau, made up lyrics to popular tunes of the day that people could sing in the camps and give them hope and connection to something, optimistic in the midst of such horror. And so as a subsequent piece, we created a song cycle called Farewell Auschwitz that had her lyrics translated by Gene Shear. And then I set them to some original tunes and then a couple of known tunes. And then we decided, well, we have these three pieces, and we made a recording of them. And we thought, well, what are we going to call this bunch of pieces, these two one-act operas and this song cycle? And so we came up with the title Out of Darkness, right? So that is what the recording was. But then we thought people started to want to perform this, and it just became, it was a little unwieldy. You have a one-act opera and then a song cycle and then a one-act opera. And so we thought we have to make a cohesive full evening work of this. And so we went to work and we rewrote the first piece, Another Sunrise, and wove in the songs that Krystyna wrote to survive in the camp and added some other characters. And so created a new first act and then kept For a Look or a Touch basically the same for the second act. And then we called this version To Remain, the number two, as in two people, Krystyna and Gad. And that's what the acts are called. And so it's this long genesis into this one act piece that I still have never seen in its final version. It was done, when we got to the final version, it was done in Atlanta at Atlanta Opera. And I couldn't be there, unfortunately. The timing was bad. And so now it's going to be done by Chicago Fringe Opera, and I'm unfortunately not able to be there again. So this is an opera of mine I have never seen. Anyway, that's a long trajectory to tell you how we got to this piece. And it's a combination of very challenging and dark because of the subject matter and the location, but also very hopeful and redemptive, because I like pieces that give you something hopeful to hang on to at the end. So they're two ghost stories, two dark nights of the soul about embracing your past and the ghosts of your past. Because if you don't embrace them and learn to live honestly with them, they will haunt you for the rest of your life.
And I would love to hear you talk a little bit about how it was that you constructed that kind of sound world with a combination of your original compositions and some familiar tunes. Like, what sort of musical influences were you trying to evoke in recreating such a specific sound world,
a specific time too? Yeah,
the specific time period. Yeah.
Well, that's actually a challenge that I love, because I grew up in a household where my dad listened to big band music and great jazz singers, and my mom sort of listened to a combination of pop and country a little bit, and my sisters were into all the rock bands, and I loved musicals, of course, and so all those influences are in my wheelhouse. And so when it came time to do these songs that she was writing and emulating and creating during the 30s and 40s, I was able to emulate the Andrews Sisters for one of the songs, a song called Miss Jutka. And I actually took a Chopin, what is it?
Nocturne, ballade, etude. Okay.
A waltz, the C-sharp minor waltz. Gosh, my poor brain. And I emulated a Schubert song, and then I did an anthem, and a real combination of things that would be influences that people at that time would have known about, and that would sound familiar to them. So really, I think all of them are pretty original. They have influences that make it sound like it's been around, but except for the Chopin, which I took directly from.
It's public domain,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
But even
it was fun and challenging, and to sort of figure it out, because we don't know what the tunes were that she set. We just have her lyrics.
Yeah.
But I also needed to make it fit into the sound world of the opera that I was creating. So this is the big challenge of opera. It's like, you don't want to just be pastiche. You want it to be of a piece, so that there's a line, a harmonic, melodic, rhythmic line that takes you from beginning to end and yet surprises you, inevitable yet surprising. It's really easy. I don't know why everyone can't do it.
No, but even in the second act, the Gadser, yeah, I remember hearing a song that felt very big band dance number. I think it's called Golden Years. Is that
Golden Years?
Yeah. So I'm assuming Chicago Fringe Opera, that's going to be like a big dance number, and all the male chorus is going to come out, like Chippendale style.
I don't know, in a Holocaust drama, if the Chippendales dancers will come out, but okay, I'll leave that to you. I don't know what they're planning. That's why I'm so upset the timing doesn't work for me to go. I was hoping just to be able to fly out just for the evening to be able to hear it, but unfortunately I can't. But I'm so grateful to them for doing it. It's very brave to do it, because it actually is a very complicated, demanding piece. And because the orchestration is a chamber ensemble of 6 instruments, those are all very, very soloistic, demanding instrumental parts. So you have to have crackerjack, great players to do it, as well as the cast to handle all the dramatic ups and downs of the piece.
Yeah, I feel like this work is very hard to market, because, listen to how long it took for you even to explain like what it is. And, the Holocaust is such a difficult topic in general, and of course there's all these other topics within all these stories within the Holocaust. So how do you address the gravity of it while not making people scared, like, oh, this is going to be a depressing evening? And like,
it's the story of survivors, and we all know what it is to survive something, and we all know to a certain extent what is necessary to survive. But what these survivors went through in the Holocaust, you don't really, sometimes survivors are cast as heroes, and they don't really like that because they don't necessarily feel heroic. They were just surviving. And then sometimes you don't know what it is to survive until the gun is pointed at your head. And so to hear these people deciding and wrestling with the story they're going to tell of their life, Because a lot of times people who survive horrific events like this, they don't want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. They want to leave it in the past, and yet some people keep asking, and they have to decide which version of what they went through they're going to share and live with for the rest of their life. And that's what this piece is about. It's about two survivors deciding, are they going to embrace or bury the past, and how they find a way to deal with those ghosts. I think everyone loves ghost stories. There's a bit of a sci-fi feel to a ghost story, and we all sort of love the magic realism of a ghost story. And what would happen if the ghosts of your past visited you and said, please just tell us the truth, embrace us, love us? Because ghosts, they just want to be loved and remembered. They don't necessarily, we want to forget, they want to be remembered. And so it's that struggle between the now and the past and the future. But I find that fascinating. I love magic realism. I love stories of people who survive and how they did it. That's why I love biographies and novels about survivors, because they're so fascinating how people get through things. And to imagine surviving something as horrific and heavy as that, and to find a redemptive way to tell that through music and poetic libretto, like Gene Shear's beautiful words, and a range of musical influences that is really exciting and engaging. It's a wonderful challenge, but I find that it actually, audiences go away uplifted from the evening, because like in the second half with the story of Gad Beck and Manfred Levine, they go away thinking, I just watched a great love story unfold. You forget that it's a gay love story. It's just a very human love story. And I think that is tremendous. And so these stories can bring perspective to us. They can give us information about things we never knew about. I'm a gay man. I did not know about the persecution of gays in the Holocaust. I did not know about people surviving in Auschwitz by writing lyrics to songs, and the songs going viral in the camp, and that giving everyone hope and opportunity for something connected and beautiful. I think that it's incredibly rich.
And with the stories being, they're so fraught and they're so heavy and so complicated, and with the perspective of that light at the end of the tunnel that you're talking about here, is there any kind of light or freshness that you hope the audience takes away that they haven't that they may not have necessarily considered before about the subject matter?
Any light of what?
Or any kind of what is if you had an audience member who could just kind of say, like, this was what I took away from that. In your dreams of this piece, what is it that they're saying to you?
Okay. In the first half, Christina winds up rejecting and deciding, no, that's not the version of the story I want to tell. I'm going to see another sunrise, and I'm going to live another day, and I'll make a decision later. So she's going to be haunted by these ghosts. Gad, at the end of Act 2, literally embraces and remembers and holds on to that ghost from his past, and finds peace. It's the first time the actor playing the role of Gad actually sings. And I think it's a big message about embracing and loving all the things that have happened to you, the good and the bad, so that you can live a fulfilled life and a complete life. Otherwise, you're sort of doomed to repeat behaviors and be trapped by the past. But if you embrace it, if you take it in, maybe music can come back into your life. Maybe something can open in your heart that was closed off. And I think that's one of the big messages of the piece, is that as horrible as things are in the past, for some people, I've been very lucky in my life. I've had some tragedy, but nothing like what these people went through. But when you can finally embrace and accept all of that as part of the journey, there can be a real liberation in your heart and an openness that maybe you had never considered before. And I think that's a perspective people sometimes lose.
Just to circle back to us, and the and the all stars of opera box score. We've had Ketelsen, we've had Joachim Schomburger as guests, and we've had Eileen Perez as a guest. And Eileen Perez, I asked her what has been your favorite role or the favorite production you've ever been in, and she said Great Scott was her favorite experience. And was that at Houston? Or
no,
was that
in Dallas?
Dallas, okay.
And she was amazing.
Yeah, and I forget the name of her character, but it was like an opera singer character, right?
Yeah, her character is Tatiana Bakst, and she is from Eastern Europe. Yeah.
Oh, she's doing Tatiana at the Met soon too. So
yes,
perfect.
I know. I'm going to see it. I can't wait.
No, but I think one of the things that you really enjoyed, obviously, was the ensemble feeling of that show, because I think in a lot of things that she sings, she's like the desperate heroine that doesn't have a lot of friends, but she said that just being in that show was such a joy because of the ensemble cast, but also because she got to be funny, and nobody ever like casts her in funny things. She's always Desdemona or something like that.
She had a showstopper number at the top of Act 2 called the Starry Spangled Banner.
We played that, yes.
Where her character gets to sing the national anthem at the Super Bowl. She had so much fun, but I'll never forget when we were in rehearsals, because it's a real showpiece. I mean, it does every vocal thing that she can do, right? It explores everything. And she was amazing in it. But the first rehearsal, when she sang it and she had her backup singers, and she was absolutely incredible, and the rehearsal room just exploded into applause. And she came over to me and she gave me this hug, and she was trembling and she was sweating like you can't imagine. And she said, "Oh my God, that was so scary." And we forget that how scary this is for these performers, because they make it seem so easy and effortless, which is their job. But it's a lot of work what they do. But Eileen was fearless, and she's so much fun. And I look forward to working with her again and again in the future.
Well, last question for you, because I know that you've also throughout this time been doing like teaching and mentoring and whatnot. Is there either a performer or a composer who you've got your eye on and you cannot wait to see what they're going to do?
Oh my gosh, so many composers, because I've even been mentoring some of the younger ones. It's really hard to even single out just one.
Name them all. We've got time.
Performers, I have to tell you, there is a young male soprano, not countertenor, soprano, named Kimon Mura.
Yep. He's been a guest on our show. We love him. I know.
That voice.
Yeah.
That voice. I mean, I'm actually going to write something for him, but I cannot wait to hear what he does, because I've never heard a voice like that. And
He's a star. Yeah.
A long time. But there is no other sound like that. I've never heard a singer like that. So I'm very excited to see and hear what he is going to do. But, I work with so many amazingly gifted young singers, and they keep showing up in droves. And I keep wondering, what are they going to do? But, that drive to perfect it and inhabit it and go on the stage and share that vibration, that loving, joyful vibration with an audience. I mean, it's like a drug. And when you have that in your DNA, it's really hard to put that fire out. It just keeps burning and burning. So there are lots of exciting composers and singers. I think we're in a really golden age of opera right now, especially in this country, with new works constantly being created all of a sudden. It's what the business of opera was in the 17th, 18th, and 19th century. People didn't want to hear old operas. They wanted to hear what was new. They wanted to hear what Donizetti was writing, or Verdi, or Mozart, or, and now they want to hear this whole fabulous array of composers from all different walks of life and backgrounds and histories. And it's just a really exciting time. I'm thrilled to be on the planet.
My boss at the radio station where I work is fond of saying that a lot of composers have been disenfranchised until recently, and the ones who are coming through now are able to use tonality and able to use recognizable forms to tell their stories because what's the original content is their story. Whereas, the grandfathered in line of composers, they are the ones that are looking for new sounds because they feel like they have to innovate. But really the innovation is in who's telling the story.
Absolutely. You're 100% right. It's in the authentic voice of that composer and what they have to say with that voice. That's why I tell young composers all the time, avoid fads, try things. Absolutely. Especially when you're young and you're in school, try everything and see what resonates as true, but always go back to what is authentically your voice. That's why the end of my email is the Oscar Wilde quote, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken.
Jake Heggie, thank you for being our guest for the second time on Opera Box Score.
You're very welcome. And this time I have a voice.
That is it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio Show about opera. Our announcer is Norm Waddell, who can be found at normwaddell.com. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast to get the full show. On Stitcher and Spotify, you can click follow, or if you listen on Apple Podcasts, just hit that plus sign. You'll get all the upcoming episodes. Send us a voice memo or email us your hot takes at operaboxscore@gmail.com. You'll get an OBS beer coaster and an OBS lapel pin just for sharing your own hot take. Our creative consultant is Oliver Camacho. Our audio editor is me. For your guests, Kyle Ketelsen and Jake Heggie, I'm Weston Williams, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as you recover in the burn ward of your local hospital. We're back next week with more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more drama across the pond from George Cedarquist. It's going to be a blast. Join us.